Nickhil and I met in sophomore year of high school in India. We went to engineering school together, and as was the case in those days, striving for excellence was a given. We moved to the United States for graduate school and then pursued tech jobs in Silicon Valley.
But that's where the similarities ended. Sudnya was always very good at art and was therefore considered very creative, whereas my fourth grade art teacher threw my entry for the school art competition into the trash can right after I left the room. And that about summarized everyone's views, including my own, on my creativity.
Over the next 25 years, our experiences helped us reshape our perspectives in both creativity and innovation.
I've had the privilege of being the founder and or CEO at startups in 3 different industries in Silicon Valley: semiconductors, consumer video, and healthcare. I've also had a stint as a professional poker player. And each of these journeys gave me practical perspective into the role that innovation and creativity play in solving hard problems. It also prepared me for what was to come next. It was 2014, a couple of years after my 40th birthday, and I was feeling pretty good about my health. I was not a smoker. I didn't drink more than a glass of alcohol every couple of weeks. I was a competitive soccer player, and I felt good about my food habits, although I did enjoy my Krispy Kreme donuts and Ghirardelli ice cream sundaes every now and then. And as the blood test results from then show, all right. As the blood test results show, my markers were quite good, apart from a maybe higher than expected triglyceride level. So when Sudnya recommended I go for a checkup to the South Asian Heart Center, I thought it was a complete waste of time. But then, is a recommendation by a spouse really a recommendation? I soon found myself at the center, and once there, they ran a slew of tests on me, and lo and behold, I was diagnosed with heart disease. I was at the 98th percentile of calcification of my arteries for someone my age, and someone even remarked I was a walking time bomb. This came as a complete shock to me. I mean, how could this happen to me? It happens to others, not to me, right? And I had to do something about it. And what I did was I went on a very strict diet. No dessert, low carbs, high on protein, fiber, and fat. And as you can see, my markers did improve significantly. Though my heart disease itself was irreversible, at least this slowed down the progress of the disease. Now, this should have been good news, right? But it didn't feel like it. In fact, it was a miserable existence because I could not eat the foods I really enjoyed and wanted to eat. And I had to figure out what to do about it. Now, if living longer was the objective, I sort of kind of achieved it because those 3 months felt like 3 years. And so I had to get out of this pity party state of mind and start to get constructive about it. What can I do about it? So I started with the question, what? What was it that I needed to get better at? And I learned that our lifestyle habits, especially when they're not done well, they lead to what is called a blood glucose spike. And continuous blood glucose spikes, especially happen over long periods of time, cause what is termed as insulin resistance. Okay? Insulin resistance is not a good thing. It leads to a lot of short-term and long-term issues, from something as simple as cravings and fatigue and weight gain to heart disease and diabetes, to potentially even some of the cancers. And now recent studies have shown a linkage to Alzheimer's. So I had to figure out how to deal with this. So the next question was how? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to figure out how to reduce these blood glucose spikes by being creative about my lifestyle habits so that I could have my cake and eat it too, literally, right? And so the way I went about it is I actually put on a number of wearable sensors, a continuous glucose monitor, a blood pressure monitor, a heart rate monitor, and you name the sensor, I had it on. I also tracked all the foods I ate, all the exercise I did, all the sleep patterns and all of that. And I collected this data over an 8-year period. During these 8 years, I continuously ran this data by my team of doctors and my clinical dietitian to ensure that any conclusions I was reaching were both medically and nutritionally relevant. Okay? The last piece of the puzzle was I had to convert these insights that I was gaining from the data into habits I could sustain for the long term. And to make sure I was down the right path, I did a blood test every 3 months, and I did this body composition analysis, which is basically, it gives you a sense for your visceral fat, your muscle mass, and so on. This was to ensure that whatever I was doing was actually helping. And I'd like to share with you a few of the results of the experiments. I ran thousands of experiments on myself, but I want to share a few of them because some of them validated age-old wisdom, while many others turned them on their head. Ice cream, for example. Unsurprisingly, it gives you a large spike. But when I had a spinach salad, followed by maybe avocado toast or a shrimp curry, and then the ice cream, the spikes were much lower. And that was because the fiber from the spinach salad and the fat from the shrimp curry slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. So, hello there again, Ghirardelli ice cream. I used to frequent this fast food chain, which was supposedly very well known for healthy sandwiches. And I had that for years. Till I realized that it was probably one of the worst things I was doing for myself. The spikes I got from having those supposedly healthy sandwiches was humongous, worse than anything I'd ever seen. And a little bit of digging revealed that the amount of sugar in that bread was so high that in some countries in Europe, that bread has been classified as cake. Okay? So having a sandwich at home is better because you control the ingredients that much better. A 10-minute walk after a meal, always a winning formula. We've been told that from the time we were young, it's still true. I wanted to show this because I think it's a sign of there is more to long-term health than just your blood glucose spikes. For example, I'm a soccer player, but soccer and tennis are both start and stop sports. You run, you stop, you run, you stop. Your liver tends to just pump in glucose to keep up with the energy demands. However, net, playing a sport is a good thing. On the other hand, drinking a glass of scotch, because it has no added sugar, causes no spike. But we know alcohol has a lot of other issues, right? And so the correct conclusion from this slide is not to stop playing soccer and drink a lot of scotch instead, right? And so there were many such things. I put them in place, and as you can see, my blood markers from just a couple of weeks back, a couple of months back rather, have been amongst the best they've ever been. And I did this by eating foods either in moderation or in the right combination, or in a few cases by cutting them out. And when I repeated this in a slightly larger program for 800 other people who wanted to do what I was doing, the markers helped them all. It's early days, but it sounds like there is a way to figure this all out. And so while I may not have impressed my 4th grade art teacher, I think the fear for my health and the pain of having to give up things like donuts and ice cream triggered in me, dare I say, a creative approach to solving the problem. Over to Sudnya.
I'd like to share with you a parallel perspective, but from a different lens. My formative years were spent in a multi-generational family. The defining story of my family was that of my great-grandfathers. Bubonic plague had devastated his town of Baranpur in India in the early 1900s. He lost 9 siblings and a mother over a 48-hour period. He had to flee with his father. As you can imagine, I grew up sensitized to stories of displacement and loss. He rose up from the ashes, so to say, rebuilt his family, kept them tightly knit under one roof, even as it grew to multiple children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He role modeled how to integrate, assimilate, innovate, and inspire. It is for us to transform our pain, he said, rather than transmit it. I grew up with a healthy combination of pride and the onus to live up to this mighty survival story. These words pretty much shaped who I became. Like most women, I juggled roles. I was a granddaughter, the apple of my father's eye, married to my childhood sweetheart, raising 3 children while being an engineer, an artist, and an activist. I enjoyed age-appropriate achievements, a few rewards and recognition as well. But I also experienced pain, I experienced disappointments, I experienced loss. Each of these labels created a solid sense of self inside of me, a self that needed a constant reassurance and validation of its worth and direction. As if I weren't advancing, I was moving backwards. A self that needed to do more, be more, have more, but not being quite good enough. That's when I woke up to the immense power of storytelling. And the most formidable one of that was of my own inner narrative. And I realized instinctively that if I didn't pay close attention to parts that needed repair, to parts that needed healing, I would transmit my insecurities, my feelings of inadequacies on those who I loved the most. I tried my hand at multiple things. My garage became my workspace. I practiced the discipline of showing up every day. I wrote, I sketched, I sculpted. My driveway became my canvas. I painted on all kinds of surfaces, school benches, furniture, even willing humans. This is how I first learned to relinquish control, embrace chaos, and celebrate imperfection. I pushed the limits of my practicality and functionality. I climbed ladders, I climbed scaffolding, even forklifts. But what I was actually doing was reprogramming my brain in baby steps by challenging set mental limits. I went big, then bigger. I displayed my art in unconventional galleries, public parks, buildings, and even from cranes over construction sites. I played with different media, stone, tile, even broken tile. Spontaneous line drawings became carved wooden blocks that embellished contemporary fabric. Paintings became fashion. Self-portraits became sweatshirts. Poetry became woven jacquard. I cured, I embroidered, and I colored live fabric that I grew out of kombucha tea. Now I know it appears like I was all over the place, chaotic, but for the first time, actually, I started to feel sane. In using my hands, my sense of touch, I was able to move the attention of my mind away from itself into the background. And what used to be glimpses of quiet became longer and longer stretches. I had discovered a tool. And in this world where none of us will be spared pain or loss, having a tool in a back pocket has no downside. Because the reality is that hurt people hurt people. Inadvertently or unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, the consequences become cumulative. A gift from having discovered this tool was that now I actually had something concrete that I could share with an entirely different community that was experiencing the same stories of displacement and loss as my ancestors. When I encountered the fear and anxiety of Afghan mothers in overcrowded refugee tents in Greece, I offered them needle and yarn. In using their hands and making me beautiful crocheted flowers, they found relief as well as purpose. In turn, their flowers brought their stories to thousands of people, thousands of miles away through this installation called A Common Thread. Unaccompanied minors who have already been traumatized by their impossibly difficult journeys trying to find refuge become easy targets to human traffickers as well as drug dealers. Paper and color gave them an alternate avenue to express their frustration, rebuild trust, learn to receive love, and reduce self-destructive behavior. A film I produced, their stories, the stories of the unaccompanied minors, inspired this museum piece called Love is the Answer. A film I produced just last week premiered at Sundance. Fremont is a narrative of love to overcome the narratives of fear around displaced humans trying to rebuild their homes, their lives in an alien land. These are a few examples where creativity, storytelling, and purpose came together to help alleviate the pain of either individuals or communities.
Having seen Sudnya's journey at such close quarters and having lived my own, I've come to the conclusion that creativity is not an attribute possessed by a fortunate few, but rather it resides in each of us. And all we need to do to activate it is to find a purpose we are deeply committed to. That doggedness opens up our mind to possibilities that we would otherwise never consider and gives us the spark to create something novel and potentially impactful.
When we see beauty, when we experience wonder, when we feel awe, we create room for transformation. The same awe as when we see dancing weeds, bison succulents, or baby spiders. Our mind gives us structure, knowledge, and 1,000 ways to resist what is, and hence struggle. But if we teach our mind to move its attention away from itself, we can reduce our sense of self. We can lower the power that our mind has in playing games with us. The true power of creativity, I found, is its ability to unleash purpose. And armed with that purpose, each of us can transform whatever pain it is that inflicts us so we don't transmit. Thank you.